All right, so today we're diving into something uh, pretty profound, the dark night of the soul.
Oh, yeah, this will be good.
You've given us three sources to guide our deep dive.
Okay.
One is like a guidebook to the dark night of the soul. Another is about finding hope in Psalm 88.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one helps us differentiate between the dark night of the soul and clinical depression.
Yeah, those can definitely get confused.
Exactly. So let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
I think it's interesting that this whole concept of the dark night of the soul
Right.
comes from this 16th century mystic, John of the Cross.
Yeah, he was he described it as this period of like intense spiritual dryness,
Oh, wow.
almost like you feel completely abandoned by God.
That's got to be tough.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating is that this can happen even to people who are super devout.
Right, that's what's so interesting. The first source really emphasizes that.
Yeah.
It says that anyone can experience this spiritual dryness.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter if you're a seasoned believer or just starting out on your spiritual path.
Yeah, it can happen to anyone.
It even mentions all these historical figures who went through similar struggles.
Really?
Job, Abraham, Jeremiah, even Jesus.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. It's a pretty universal human experience when you think about it that way.
Totally. It's like it transcends time and belief systems.
Right. And it's not just some ancient concept either.
Yeah.
Our second source is all about Psalm 88,
Mm-hmm.
which is known for being one of the darkest and most despairing psalms in the whole Bible.
Oh, yeah, it's bleak.
But even in all that despair, there's still this glimmer of hope, especially when we connect to, a higher power.
Makes sense.
There's this really powerful story in there, too,
Oh, what is it?
about a pastor who found a lot of comfort in this specific psalm.
Okay.
He was going through a really rough time, like feeling lost and overwhelmed.
Right.
But he found a lot of comfort in expressing all those raw emotions to God. Yeah, it was like Psalm 88 gave him the words to express his pain
Yeah.
and to connect to something beyond himself.
I can see how that'd be helpful.
Totally. And it really highlights the importance of authenticity in our spiritual lives.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. If we try to bottle up all those negative emotions, especially during spiritual struggles, it just leads to more isolation.
Oh, absolutely.
But when we express those feelings, like the psalmist does in Psalm 88, it can actually be a way to connect more deeply.
For sure. Like letting it all out.
Yeah, exactly. And the pastor in the story, he even shared his struggles with a friend.
It's good to have people you can talk to.
Right. It's like acknowledging the darkness, bringing it into the light by sharing it was a step toward finding a way out.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like once you name it, it has less power over you.
Totally. It makes you wonder if shared experiences, even of darkness and despair,
Mm-hmm.
can lead to connection and eventually hope.
Absolutely. Misery loves company, as they say.
Right. And the source even talks about the sons of Korah and Heman the Ezrahite.
Okay.
They found comfort in expressing their darkest emotions through Psalm 88, too.
So shared experience and suffering. Powerful stuff.
Yeah. So all that said, how do we differentiate between the dark night of the soul and, like, actual depression?
Right, because those can feel similar.
Exactly. That's where our third source comes in handy.
Okay, what does it say?
It breaks down the main differences between the two.
Okay, so what are they?
So it says depression impacts your whole life. It affects your energy, your focus, your relationships, even your ability to enjoy things.
Yeah, it's all encompassing.
Exactly. But the dark night, on the other hand, is more focused on your relationship with God
Okay, I'm following.
and your sense of spiritual purpose.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Source also talks about how depression often have physical symptoms too,
Mm-hmm.
like sleep problems and appetite changes,
Mm-hmm. Those are common.
and those aren't as typical with the dark night.
Okay, makes sense.
Another big difference is the sense of meaning.
Meaning, how so?
Well, depression can make life feel totally meaningless,
Right.
but the dark night, even with all its challenges, can still have a sense of spiritual purpose.
So it's more about feeling disconnected from God.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like a complete absence of meaning in life itself.
That's a good distinction.
And then there's how these experiences affect other people.
Oh, yeah, good point.
The source says that being around someone who's depressed can be really draining,
It can be, yeah.
but being around someone going through the dark night might actually make you feel more compassionate and
Interesting.
even more connected to God's love.
Wow. So there really are distinct experiences.
Yeah, they really are. But here's the thing. If you think you might be dealing with depression,
Yeah,
it's crucial to seek professional help.
absolutely. Don't try to just pray it away or anything.
Exactly, because trying to spiritualize depression or putting off treatment can be really harmful.
It's important to remember those are two very different things.
Yes, they need different approaches.
So if the dark night is its own thing,
Yeah.
how do we deal with it? Like, what do we do when we feel God is absent?
Good question. Let's see what our sources have to say about that.
All right, sounds good. So picking up where we left off, the dark night of the soul, it's not a sign of failure or anything?
No, not at all. It can be like the opposite, really.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the first source says that it can actually be a sign of spiritual maturity.
Okay.
Like you've reached a certain level of depth in your relationship with God,
Mhm.
and now you're being challenged to go even deeper.
It's like a next level of faith.
Yeah, exactly. Like imagine you're using a familiar map, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
To navigate a terrain you know really well.
Right.
But then suddenly the terrain changes
Uh-oh.
and you need a new map, a new way of navigating.
I see.
That's kind of what the dark night is like.
So you're kind of wandering in the dark.
Yeah, in a way you are.
Wow.
The first source actually describes it as a time of testing. Like you're asked to love and worship God,
Okay.
even when you don't feel those warm, fuzzy feelings.
Yeah.
Those spiritual highs.
I get it. So it's about a deeper connection, less about the surface stuff.
Exactly. And this is not a new concept either.
No?
No. Think about all those Psalms where they cry out to God,
Oh, yeah.
like Psalm 13, Psalm 88.
Those are some intense songs.
Right. They literally ask, where are you, God? Why have you abandoned me?
Heavy stuff.
Yeah. But it shows you that this feeling of abandonment is not unique to us.
Makes you feel less alone.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And, this source also suggests
What's that?
that we can find comfort by remembering those times when we did feel God's grace.
Oh, okay.
Even when God feels absent, we can draw strength from those past experiences.
So remembering when things were good?
Yeah, like looking back at old photographs of happy times.
I like that.
Things might be tough now,
Mm.
but remembering those joyful moments can remind us that
Whatcha?
light and love are still out there,
Okay, I'm following.
and they'll eventually return.
Hopeful.
Yeah, and sometimes the way back to that light is by just expressing all those raw emotions to God.
Just let it all out.
Yeah, like the psalmist did. The second source, the one about Psalm 88, really emphasizes this.
Really?
Remember the story about the pastor?
The one who found comfort in Psalm 88.
Yeah. He didn't just read it to himself. He shared his struggles with a friend. He questioned, he cried, he let it all out.
Oh, like not holding back.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to release those emotions.
Yeah.
And who better to release them to than God or a trusted friend?
Yeah, someone who can listen without judgment.
Exactly. It's about vulnerability,
Mhm.
acknowledging that we're not always okay.
Being real with ourselves.
Exactly. And actually, that vulnerability could be a form of connection, both with God and with other people.
That's deep. I never thought of it that way.
It all ties back to shared experience,
Like we talked about earlier.
The sons of Korah, Heman the Ezrahite, remember?
They found comfort in their shared struggle.
Right. It's powerful to know that you're not alone in your suffering.
Not going through it alone.
Yeah, it creates a sense of solidarity, of shared humanity. Like we're all in this together.
A community of sufferers.
But not just sufferers, like fellow travelers, all seeking the light together.
I like that. It's a good image.
And this really emphasizes the importance of finding support when we're going through this.
Support. Yeah, like what?
A spiritual director, a therapist,
Yeah.
a close friend, maybe even a support group.
Being with people who get it?
Exactly. Having someone who understands what you're going through can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And sometimes the support comes from unexpected places.
Oh, yeah. How so?
The third source mentions that sometimes caring for someone who's in the dark night, it can actually evoke feelings of God's love.
Oh, wow. So you're saying that by helping others, we can feel closer to God.
It's like in showing compassion and support to someone else, we're tapping into that deeper well of love.
Wow. So even in the midst of darkness, there's potential for light.
Exactly. It can emerge in the most unexpected places.
So what we're hearing from all three sources is that this dark night,
Yeah.
it's not something to be afraid of.
No, it's a part of the journey.
Right. It's a chance for growth, for transformation, for really deepening our relationship with God.
And maybe even coming out stronger on the other side.
Exactly. It's about trusting the process.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Letting go of old ways of seeing things, embracing vulnerability, and finding that support from others who are on a similar path.
Like we talked about, that shared journey.
And who knows, maybe on the other side of all that darkness, there's a new dawn waiting.
A new way of seeing the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's more to unpack here, so let's continue this in part 3. You were saying earlier about John of the Cross.
Yeah.
And how he saw the dark night as a path to a deeper relationship with God.
Let's talk more about that. Okay, so John of the Cross, he called it spiritual maturation.
Okay.
The first source says it's not about just getting through the darkness, but about letting it change you.
Oh.
Like refining your faith.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, it deepens our understanding of God.
So it's not just weathering the storm, it's about the storm, like changing us.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like-
The idea is we're stripped of all the things we thought we needed to be close to God, like
what?
rituals, emotional highs, certainty. And what's left is this like raw vulnerability,
Wow.
this longing for something more.
Okay.
And in that space, that's where real transformation can happen.
So when we're at our lowest.
That's what John of the Cross thought.
Interesting.
He said that when you come out of the dark night, you experience God in a totally new way.
So it's not just about the feelings or like head knowledge?
No, it's about recognizing God in everyday life, in the ordinary stuff.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's not about looking for those big dramatic signs from God.
Right. It's about seeing God in the little things.
The small stuff.
Yeah.
And you know what? The source says this can actually lead to more peace, joy, even fruitfulness.
Like even more than before.
Yeah, it's not just surviving the dark night. It's about thriving afterward.
Coming out stronger.
Exactly.
It's like all those practices we talked about, praying the Psalms, being in nature, reading spiritual stories.
Yeah.
They're not just things to help us cope.
No.
They're like tools to help us see and experience God in this new way.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like we're learning a new language.
You talk to God.
Yeah, and the more we practice, the better we get at it.
That makes sense.
So the darkness, maybe it's not empty.
What do you mean?
Remember that line from Psalm 88?
The darkness is my closest friend.
Yes. It's like, what if we don't fear the darkness? What if we see it as a companion, a guide, even a teacher?
Instead of fighting it, we surrender.
Exactly.
And in that surrender, that's where we find strength, maybe even clarity. Like John of the Cross in prison.
Right.
He could have given up, but instead he embraced the darkness.
And found God there.
Yeah, he turned his longing for God into something powerful.
He realized even in the worst situations, you can still connect with God.
If you're open to it.
That's a good point.
So the dark night, it's not a punishment.
What is it then?
It's an invitation.
An invitation.
Yeah, to go deeper, to let go of how we used to see things, to embrace the mystery of it all.
So as we finish up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave everyone with some questions to think about.
Sounds good.
What are your experiences with this? What helps you feel connected when things are tough? And how can you see this darkness, not as something bad, but as something to learn from?
As a guide.
Yeah, remember, you're not alone in this.
We're all on this journey together.
And maybe when we share this darkness,
Yeah.
we actually find ourselves closer to the light than we thought.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, until next time, when you find peace and courage, even in the shadows.